All right, my name is Tiago Ramasamy. I'll be your room host for the afternoon. Few housekeeping items. Fire exits right behind you. Restrooms are right outside to your left. If you don't have our apps, please download them. We do take the data when you submit your session surveys. We do use them to improve the next few sessions, so definitely submit them. For the next session, we do have Jason from VMware to talk to our fastest path to multi-cloud.
Hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud.
I knew it. Yeah, thank you.
Not that VMware is against multi-cloud. Don't get me wrong, but at this conference, it's hybrid cloud. All right. Well, as you said, my name's Jason Joel. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. I came here 2 years ago to present about VMware Cloud and AWS, and everyone wondered why VMware was at an AWS conference. And then last year, we shared our initial availability and limited availability of our VMware Cloud on AWS service. And this year, I wanted to come and kind of give everybody an update on where the service is at, all the customers onboarded, and the compliance status that we have achieved. We've made a remarkable amount of progress in the last year. And I think people will be very excited about how this has become a reality, and it is available today to be able to use for you to build the best hybrid cloud solution in the industry, and to get to a hybrid cloud solution that's feasibly viable, and we think is one of the best offerings in the industry. Let's go through the introduction slides. I am from VMware, and I am personally responsible for security, compliance, and operations for the VMware Cloud and AWS service. And I focus very heavily on the public sector space, which is why I'm invited to come talk to you, and have been working with the public sector area and federal agencies for the last several years. The VMware Cloud and AWS GovCloud offering is a parallel offering to our commercial service that is a joint partnership between VMware and AWS that fundamentally both companies have invested an enormous amount of financial and personnel resources in order to make it easier for customers like yourselves to migrate from on-prem data centers and into the cloud and to build hybrid workloads. The fundamental components behind the service is VMware's leading compute, storage, and network virtualization components running on AWS's flexible data center, cloud services, and secure environments. So we have married the best of both companies together to provide a service that lets you run your vSphere workloads and your vSphere environments on the AWS's cloud environment. So what this translates to, and I'm just going to go over this a little bit to make sure the audience is at a level set. Many of you may have heard this before, but I'll try to keep it brief. But what it translates to is VMware is deploying our vSphere, vSAN, and NSX software on bare metal hardware running in AWS's data centers. And we're operating this as a service for our customers. And what you can do with that is you can link to your existing virtual center deployments, and you can manage your cloud resources in the same way you've managed your on-prem resources. And in fact, you can drag and drop your workloads between your data center to the cloud using a technology you may be familiar with called vMotion. And up until now, it has been extremely difficult to move your workloads from your data center to the cloud. You fundamentally have to refactor everything. You have to come up with all new concepts for load balancers and security groups, and they just don't match what you've been doing historically. And firewalls, et cetera, are all different when you try to move to the cloud. And one of my fundamental questions is when I joined the project about 3 years ago now was why did AWS want VMware in their data center? And what made sense to them for it? And why are they part of this relationship and investing so heavily in it? And the answer became very clear, is that AWS customers were struggling to move enterprise workloads into their cloud. It was taking an enormous investment and an enormous amount of time to move even an Exchange server from one environment to the other, or a SharePoint environment from one to the other, or an SAP instance from their on-prem data center to the cloud. It was extremely difficult because their teams have invested decades of time and energy into their automation, into their runbooks, into their processes, into their compliance, into their security mechanisms, and they have to relearn everything when they do a migration to a native platform. Now, with this solution, the ability to take your existing virtual machines, your vSphere environment, and literally shift it to the cloud gives you the ability to do a cloud transformation and move to a hybrid cloud platform without making that massive investment. And that's why it's the fastest way to get to a hybrid cloud environment. Because you don't have to move your whole workload. You can stretch part of your workload or parts of your workload that make sense. And you don't have to do it with any refactoring. And so all the investment you've made in training and in your automation and your monitoring and your personnel is fully leverageable. Now, beyond that, part of the partnership with AWS allows us to extend that environment into leveraging native AWS services. So true hybrid clouds, the benefit of hybrid clouds not only gives you cloud capabilities, but allows you to take advantage of some native cloud services. And there is no one better in the industry than Amazon in providing native cloud services. It's why many of us are here. So if you want to use machine learning capabilities or facial recognition capabilities or Lambda, you can do that right from this relationship. From your vSphere workloads, can access the latest AWS native services. And part of our relationship is there's no ingress or egress charges between that, which is incredibly powerful. So not only do you have a quick way to migrate, you get into a cloud where you can then build on, and your future development can incrementally innovate with the latest technologies while you maintain your existing workloads. So with this offering and VMware in general, we believe we have the only true hybrid cloud platform in the industry. Because you can run your workloads in your data center. You can run your workloads in Amazon data centers now. You can run your workloads in any one of our 6,000 partners' data centers. And the workloads are all running the same vSphere, vSAN, NSX versions that we commercially make available. And we call it our hybrid cloud platform. And so truly, wherever you want to run your workloads, you have that ability. And with this relationship with Amazon, it gives you ability on an unprecedented level to take advantage of Amazon's cloud capabilities. Let me get into some of that. So what are our customers using this for today? So our primary use cases are data center extension, disaster recovery, cloud migration, and then building some next generation apps. Let me go into that a little bit. Data center extension clearly happens often when there's a merger, acquisition, spin-off, and you suddenly need more data center space. It often happens when you suddenly need some test dev environments or hardware requirements that you can't meet the needs of by ordering new boxes to land in your data center. You might not have space in your data center. It might take you 6 months to get a new box. All of that is practical. Whereas in the cloud, you can click a button and have it there in a matter of minutes. Disaster recovery makes a lot of sense in this service because you don't have to have 500 machines sitting idle for the 3 tests a year that you run. With the cloud environment, you can scale up on demand and when you need to. So you can have a small footprint of hardware running in the cloud where you can replicate your data to, and then expand out in the event there's an incident. You can spin up all the extra machines you need and only pay for them when you're using them, which is a massive ROI changing financial strategy. And I will tell you, a lot of our customers have openly admitted their current DR strategy isn't quite up to the level they'd like it to be. So this is an opportunity to start from scratch. Cloud migrations, I think many of us have been faced with pressure from our executives or our C-level suites or our mission owners to get out of the data center or to get to the cloud or cloud-first strategies or cloud initiatives. And we believe that VMware Cloud on AWS is your best way to do that. And one of our customers actually said, you make it so easy to try the cloud that I'm an idiot if I don't try your service. And when we asked what he meant by that is he can move virtual machines in a weekend to the cloud, and if it didn't work, he can move it back in the same weekend. So he said, try it, and he did, and he stayed. So that's a good sign. But any other trying of the cloud involves the major refactoring I discussed previously, and it's not easy to try it. You have to really commit up front. So the ability to do cloud migrations and either do specific applications or consolidate or eliminate some of your data centers or avoid doing a hardware refresh in the data center are some of the primary reasons customers are looking at the service. And then the next generation apps is about building the latest container-based apps and building the latest, taking advantage of the latest cloud services. And with VMware Cloud and AWS, you have the best of both worlds. VMware is leading the industry in its container investments and our initiatives in that space, but so is Amazon. And so between the two of them, you have the best of both worlds, and you don't have to make a fundamental choice up front of, do I switch everything to containers? Do I have to do it in the next 2 years? Or can I pick and choose the right products, the right services, and the right applications to do at the right time? And this gives you that flexibility. Let me switch gears a little bit to something I think is interesting to this audience, and that's a little bit of security and compliance. We fundamentally benefit from 3 factors. And that is that we are building the service on Amazon's GovCloud environment. And that is a trusted, secure environment that many of you have already vetted extensively. They have many, many ATOs, FedRAMP certifications. They've been reviewed multiple times by hundreds of auditors. And so VMware benefits, and the VMware service benefits by running on that platform. And we can take advantage of their global infrastructure, the whole regions concept, availability zones, and edge locations that they offer today, along with the security components. But then on top of that, VMware has been running VMware products and infrastructure for 20 years. We're the industry-leading virtualization platform. Hands down, most public sector agencies are running vSphere today, and they trust it, and they have put it through its own paces on-prem. So we have both the security of the Amazon infrastructure and the industry-proven vSphere environment on top of that, which has really helped us build a very secure, very capable platform on which to get our certifications and get the security components that we need in place. Now, on top of that, this is the Amazon shared security model. So it should be familiar to you, where you still own and control your data. You still own and control your virtual machines. You still own and control the operating systems, networks, and you can still put your own security tooling in place on top of that. So you have a lot of control at the customer level. But the big area here that's new is that VMware's responsibility is in monitoring, operating, and patching the virtual infrastructure on your behalf, which is tremendously helpful because anybody who tried to patch vSphere knows it's a major investment of time and energy, and no one enjoys it. So with us doing it, there's no one better in the world than the experts who wrote the software themselves. But the other thing this provides is what I would consider an unprecedented way to run vSphere workloads in the cloud in terms of security. We have 4 rings of defense that I think you'll understand offer something no one else can offer. Foremost in our service, we run a dedicated AWS account and VPC for every customer. So it is dedicated to you, just like when you put your credit card in and get your own account and get your own VPC. VMware creates a dedicated account and VPC for you. So you have no concerns, if you trust it with your own credit card, you have no concerns that the isolation at an Amazon level is any different than the isolation you trust today. Now, on top of that, the VMware Cloud and AWS service is deploying, as I mentioned before, on bare metal hardware. So we are dedicating EC2, i3 metal, or hosts to each customer, typically 3 or more of them, for high availability and storage. But it is dedicated hardware. So you don't have any concerns about chatty neighbors or some of the recent threats about escapes from other tenants on a single box. Stuff like that is not a practical threat. You can still have an issue with your own employees, but you don't have other people using the same physical hardware. And the service uses local storage, local compute, and local memory on those boxes. So it's a physical isolation layer. And all storage is encrypted. It's a local NVMe storage and vSAN encryption on top of that. And the third layer of security is the VMware Cloud Foundation. So It has logical isolation on its own, which is VMware's virtual machines that you've been familiar with previously. We have the permissions models. We have its own encryption. We have our own roles. We have vSphere logging. And we have a whole host of third-party security products that work today just like they do today in your environment because it's the same vSphere technology, same exact versions you're running. Okay. And then finally, as I mentioned before, there's application-level security with in-guest products. So in the guests themselves, you can run your own encryption, your own network monitoring, your own application monitoring, your own security tooling that you own and control. So between the 4 levels of security, it is hard, if not impossible, to match that level of secure cloud workloads that are running vSphere. And because of that, we have been successful at achieving our listing on the FedRAMP marketplace. We are currently we passed our FedRAMP ready status, and we are currently in process for a FedRAMP high ATO. So that is a very high bar. But as I mentioned, we start with a very good foundation that we are building towards that bar. We are, Coalfire is our auditor, and we are currently, literally, if I'm not here, I'm back in the office meeting with Coalfire, going through our FedRAMP High audit today, in the last couple weeks and the next couple weeks. So let me talk a little bit about the features of the service and the functionality, and then I'm actually going to show you a demo because I've seen a lot of slides. And by demo, I'm going to admit it's pre-recorded because they wouldn't let me bring a laptop. But I will try to talk through the demo and give you an idea what it actually looks like instead of just slideware. So one of the key things that's important for everyone to realize is the GovCloud instance is a completely separate, isolated instance from our commercial offering called VMware Cloud on AWS. So VMware Cloud on AWS GovCloud, though, leverages the same code base. It is the same vSphere version, same NSX version, same vSAN version, and then the cloud control plane that we operate from is the same code base. We have had to make some runtime build differences between the two because of the FedRAMP requirements and compliance requirements, but fundamentally it's the same code base, which gives us the ability to keep them in sync and feature as close as reasonable feature parity. It is deployed, it has the same fundamental features. You are running vSphere. So when you see the demo in a minute, you'll say, oh, that kind of looks familiar. It's vSphere. The SDDCs today are currently running in multiple availability zones, and in GovCloud we will be offering multi-region soon. We already offer multi-region support in our commercial offering. We are not in GovCloud East yet, and that is just a hardware logistics planning business decision. Will be there soon. And then there are minor differences between the two services around onboarding and authentication, driven heavily by the security nature of GovCloud itself and of the industry and the regulations. All right. With that said, I'm going to give a demo, but I'm going to caveat it. It's recorded, so I'm going to have to try to keep up with the recording because it doesn't let me pause. All right, so the first thing most customers do when they see the first screen of the service is they actually create a software-defined data center. So there's one here created, but I'm going to start by creating one for you. And what a software-defined data center is the equivalent, the VMware equivalent of an Amazon VPC. Okay? So you define your software-defined data center, you decide how many hosts you put in it. That's on those hosts is what vSphere, vSAN, and NSX is deployed. And so you have all your virtual compute, networking, and storage in that data center itself. And so to create a software-defined data center, you click on the button in the upper right corner that says Create SDDC, and you go through a couple of steps. The first thing is you pick your region, tell them how many hosts you want, give it a name, choose the physical number of hosts. You can go up to 16. In the demo, I only had 4, but you can go up to 16. And then you have 3 more steps to go through. The next step, you actually connect to your AWS account. And this is important because, as I mentioned, you get to leverage AWS native services. And the way we do that is we connect to the account that you have and the VPC that you already own or set up for this purpose. And anything you run in that VPC still stays under your control and is fully yours, but you can connect to it and leverage it here. And so I've selected the account, I select the VPC, and I choose the subnet that I want to connect to, because you can have multiple VPCs in that account, and you can have multiple subnets. And then the last step that I'm going to do here is I actually have to give a CIDR block to the VMware Cloud on AWS service to tell them where I want my management VMs, my vSphere Virtual Center interface, to be put on. Because typically customers stretch their network to connect to this, and you don't want a collision with the vSphere instance in the cloud and the vSphere instance you have on-prem. And then you press deploy, and it goes through deploying. Yes, I sped that up a little bit because it takes about an hour and 18 minutes, it said, to actually deploy. And you end up with the public sector demo SDDC. And if you view the details on that, it says you have 3 hosts, a certain amount of compute, memory, and storage. And you can just simply click a button to add or remove a host. And adding and removing hosts is about 5 minutes. So how many minutes does it take you to add a host in your data centers? Not 5. The last thing it showed there quickly was Elastic DRS, which allows you to set parameters to grow and reduce the number of hosts. And after you've deployed your SDDC, you can go in and set up your management networking. And this is our NSX interface. This is the microsegmentation distributed firewall interface. You can set up your VPNs, your NAT, your gateway firewalls, your distributed firewalls. You can create public IP addresses here. You can also link to your direct connects that already exist. And as you can see, I've just previewed the firewall rules that are there. And then the next step I'm going to do is open Virtual Center. And this should look familiar. This is Virtual Center. I know it's a big ta-da moment. This is kind of a Vienna White kind of move. But it's not that awe-inspiring, right? Because this is what you've seen. And what is truly awesome is that this is running in AWS's data center in GovCloud West. So it is there, fully available to you. This is your interface that looks exactly like what you're used to, has all the feature set you're used to. I'm creating a VM here for the benefits just to prove it actually works. But you have all the VM capabilities. You can create all of your permissions like you normally do. You can configure it as you normally would. You can link to it with hybrid link mode. And you can operate just like you would one of your own data centers. And in fact, customers tend to just add on the left-hand side of their existing vSphere environment an SDDC data center in the cloud, and it just looks like their 5th, 6th, or 7th data center that they're already managing. And it now has cloud capacity, just like as if they stood up another data center of their own, running at a colo somewhere else. All right. And that should be the end of the... There you go. There's the VM, and I think I'm going to power it on. There we go. Not exciting because I didn't install an OS. There's no game or anything running in it, but you get the idea. And this is what makes it so powerful and so honestly the true hybrid cloud of the industry. All right, so let me share with you, a lot of questions come up for people who haven't necessarily seen this or gotten their hands on it yet, is, okay, what are some of the differences between the GovCloud and commercial instances? So I want to share with you some things that are still in development. Our site recovery management between the on-prem environment and the cloud, automatically syncing your VMs, is something we offer in the commercial service. We are very close to making it available in the GovCloud region. I mentioned multi-region support. One we are working on enabling the GovCloud East version, instance and region. It is not available today, but we are working on it. And just practically, so people understand, when you work in the cloud, you're basically making capacity somebody else's problem. So we want to make sure there's enough demand before we rack and stack the right hardware in that region. Log intelligence is under development. Hybrid link mode. Hybrid cloud extension is the way to use and move a large quantity of VMs in and out of the cloud. And so that one allows our customers to do mass migrations. There are ways to do migrations without it, but it certainly simplifies it with the HCX capability. HCX vMotion with Snowball. A very interesting capability. If you have a very large quantity of data that you want to move to the cloud, you can use Snowball and theoretically Snowmobile. Haven't done that one yet, but Snowball we have. And that helps you actually leverage, again, Amazon technologies to move from your data center into the cloud using something that's tried and true. There are some other instance types we offer in commercial, the R5 instance type and i3EN. And what R5 is that's very fascinating is it's EBS storage backed. So it doesn't just use the local disks, it actually uses EBS backed storage. vSAN leverages that, and it gives you the ability to scale your storage separately from your local storage and from local compute. And then Horizon is being asked about all the time. So that's VMware's VDI solution running in this environment. But there are some features that will never come to this environment, and I want to be clear about that. Hopefully nothing you're too upset about. The single host SDDC is something we run in the commercial offering. A lot of people use credit cards for it, try it for a month and then throw it away. We haven't seen a lot of interest or demand in this public sector space for a single host. We see more people trying to run production quality workloads, and a single host you cannot run production on. If you lose the host, you lose your data. So it's fundamentally just a playground. In-product chat support, we leverage a third-party service that is not FedRAMP certified for that, and instead we offer our VMware federal support organization that supports you today on vSphere is the same team that supports this service. In-product guided tours, again, kind of a third-party thing, and in-product surveys, I'm sure you're not going to miss those, and credit card purchasing. But otherwise, it's fundamentally the same service as our commercial offering. And credit card purchasing, again, some compliance-related issues, but also not much demand from public sector. All right, so I get asked timelines. So when I stood up here last year and talked about our limited availability, we did make the service available, and we do have customers on board, and we're very excited about that. And we did achieve FedRAMP ready, and we are FedRAMP in process with a high ATO with a sponsoring agency. So we're very excited about the progress we've made on all of that, and we look forward to onboarding more customers and moving forward with that. We expect in the second half of this year we'll make the service generally available. Oh, sorry. Jumped, wrong button. There we go. Generally available. We are targeting being the operative word, achieving a FedRAMP high ATO by the end of this year. Right? It's not fully under our control, but things are looking like they're going in the right direction. We also are committed to filing our paperwork for IL4 and IL5 workloads this year. So we expect we'll have the controls in place and be submitting our paperwork to DISA for approval for that. We would like to comply with ITAR regulations by early next year, and then leverage our FedRAMP paperwork and certifications to go and support a CGIS. And then finally, there is some discussions currently about potentially expanding our offering to support classified workloads in 2020. All right, so one thing I wanted to spend a little bit of time on is actually when we launched limited availability, we did have some caveats. And in the last year, we've been able to get rid of some of those. We are interested in expanding the service to additional customers, so anybody interested, please contact your VMware account teams. We are now operating and monitored by U.S. persons on U.S. soil, and we have expanded our VMware federal support team. Last year we talked about that being the plan. It has actually been done. You now talk to a federal global support services person who has the right certifications to talk to most customers, DoD in particular, and they are very, very experienced with vSphere. So the good news is they've been working on vSphere 10 years or more. We are currently supporting SLAs in GovCloud now, capable of doing that. And our service is about to go to 24/7 from 9 to 5, so we're close to that. And one of the other issues we had is the time we weren't sure if our SDCs would be upgradable. And what I mean by that is when vSphere 6.7 Update 1 or Update 2 comes out, VMware would always patch that for you. And in the limited availability version of our offering, we were making so many changes, and we openly communicated that to everybody who was involved, that we weren't sure if they would be upgradable, and now we're at a state where we commit to upgrading them and patching them for you. So, all right. And the last slide I got is pricing. A lot of people want to know, what does it cost? So this is very transparent, very publicly available. It's on VMware's website. And it's important to understand what our offering includes. There is on-demand hourly pricing, and that allows you to pay for a server or set of servers 1 hour at a time. So you can deploy the SDC I just showed you of 3 servers and shut it down an hour later and pay for 1 hour for 3 servers. So or you can sign up for a 1-year or a 3-year reserved instance, very similar to the models you have with Amazon. We recognize our customers are similar and like a similar model. There's an effective hourly rate for that, and you can see there's a massive savings if you sign up for a reserved instances. On top of that, this does not include discounts you might get from our hybrid loyalty program or through your sales channel. And these prices, though, include all VMware software, all the service, and the AWS infrastructure behind it. So you get one bill from VMware exclusively. So it covers everything you need to run your VMware Cloud and AWS instance in the cloud. And then, as I mentioned, if you do take advantage of native AWS services, those are in your own VPC and come from your direct bill from Amazon related to that. And bandwidth and IP charges, public IP address charges, are not included. So that is based on consumption, and that will be included in your monthly bill at the end of every month. And it does, depending on how much you use, you will pay for that. And it used to be identical, and my slide has changed. They now pass through and will be similar to AWS published rates. So we made a slight change there, I guess. But it should be very close to the published rates that you get from AWS today. Okay. With that said, I'm opening up to any questions you might have. I'm happy to answer anything you want to know about the service. Yes?
You mentioned earlier about no ingress, egress charges.
Okay, very good question. The question was, I mentioned earlier about no ingress and egress charges. So you do still have egress charges when you take content out of the VMware Cloud on AWS instance back to your data center. So just like anything you exit Amazon, you have to pay for. But if you run an RDS instance in your own VPC and you access it from an application running in vSphere, the connection between the linked VPC that you set up in the demo that I showed you, there are no egress charges for communication between those two VPCs.
So if I actually do a vMotion, let's just say I vMotion my services to AWS.
vMotion to AWS should be free. vMotion out of AWS, you'll have to pay some network traffic for. Other questions? Yeah.
Would I have to have a new AWS setup if I wanted to have VMware Cloud to possibly integrate things that already exist?
That's entirely up to you. So most of our customers have an existing AWS account that they link to, that they've already invested in creating RDS instances or running Lambda or have their own EC2 instances natively running, and they just link to it because that's what they wanted. You have the option to create a dedicated AWS account just for linking purposes, but you must have an AWS account to link to. It's part of the relationship we have with AWS.
Okay. For the host, that was 3 servers. That's 3 VPC, 3 EC2s. What was the memory? And,
i3 instances, good question.
CPUs.
So the hosts themselves, the i3 instances, I think are 48 cores, 512 megs of memory, and 32 terabytes of storage. So anybody, I'm close on that, give or take a core or two, but roughly that's what the i3, and you can look up i3 eMetal, it's a standard AWS EC2 bare metal type. The R5 is also has more memory and more compute and less storage, and the i3EN has a larger hard drives, and that's what's coming in the roadmap. They're very fast, and all the drives are NVMe storage drives, so screaming fast, which makes vSAN incredible.
On the slide, you said FedRAMP ready. Is it, you meant to say FedRAMP certified?
No. FedRAMP ready is a process by the FedRAMP PMO that you can have an auditor come in and validate that you have the top 100 most critical FedRAMP controls in place.
So it's not FedRAMP ready? FedRAMP certified.
We do not have a FedRAMP ATO yet. We are in process to get our ATO, to be clear, and we get a lot of questions about this, so I'm glad you asked. But FedRAMP ready is a major milestone. It means a lot of the encryption and the authentication and major security controls have been in place and audited by a third-party auditor, and that the paperwork's been submitted to the PMO and they've accepted it. So as an agency, you have the option to accept the risk, and many agencies have looked at that and said FedRAMP Ready is a very good benchmark by which I can accept the risk to run certain workloads on. So it's a difficult milestone to achieve and one we're very proud of. And the FedRAMP PMO put it in place because there were a lot of companies who tried to get a FedRAMP ATO and failed because they couldn't even meet the most fundamental controls. So they gave us kind of a stepping stone to say, if you can meet this benchmark, then you can pursue your ATO. Yep, other questions?
What would you say is the hardest learning curve for a schmuck like me who's been using vSphere forever, loves vSphere, knows what he needs to know, moving to this? Because like AWS to me is intimidating because of I have to learn everything all over again. Obviously this is geared for me. What do you think is the hardest part that I'm going to have to grasp?
So the question is, what's the hardest part of adopting this service? And there are two hard parts, frankly, that our customers struggle with. And the first one is setting up the network connection between the cloud and their own data center. So doing that, you can set up a VPN, or you can leverage your existing direct connect. But that involves working with your IT teams and figuring out how to configure the VPN correctly. And VMware solves that and helps you with that because we have a dedicated customer success team to help you onboard to use the service. And we do that, it's like professional services that we pay for, because unless you get over that hump, you can't use the service, and we don't make money unless you're using the service. So it's in our best interest to get you over at least the initial networking one. And the second challenge people have is the directory services integration. So doing the SAML connections back to their on-prem AD instances because they want their security groups I'm using Amazon terminology, their VMware permission groups to match what they have on-prem and be tied to their own AD instance. And none of this is rocket science. It's been done many times before, but everybody's directory services environment's slightly different, and you have to work with your team to get it connected and configured. Now, we use VMware's Identity Manager behind the scenes, which is a very robust tool for doing identity management and integration, which gives us a lot of capabilities to support LDAP and AD services, et cetera, but it's still non-trivial. But when you get through that, and it usually takes a couple of days with some help, and most of the time is filing tickets and waiting for the response from your own IT teams. Once you get through that, the rest is click to add a host, click to deploy an SDC, and then get into vSphere. And that's really our intent. As I said, the ta-da moment was, after all this, what you're seeing is what you used to see, and that's what's so amazing, is it just works the way it should. Other questions? Yes?
The hourly host, that is separate from the SDDC. You have to add the SDDC and then add host, correct? Because
Yes.
you have an hourly host charge.
So I think I heard your correct question. So I started with a 3-host software-defined data center. And the reason I do that is because vSAN needs to stripe your data across 3 physical hosts in order to ensure high availability. You never want to have a host loss cause you to have a data loss environment. So vSAN stripes your data across it and then uses the 3rd host as a witness host to make sure that your data is tolerant of a single host failure. You can add a 4th, 5th, 6th, up to 16 hosts in a single cluster or remove them. And you can pay for those 3 hosts on a 3-year reserved instance and add a host for an hour and then remove it an hour later, or add 2 hosts for an hour and remove that 2 hours later. Entirely up to you how you want to do that. But we also support multi-cluster. So you can create a 2nd cluster or a 3rd cluster under the same virtual center interface. And you can do that because some customers might want to create a cluster dedicated to Oracle. And Oracle is very license sensitive to the number of hosts and cores and processors you have on that. So you might want to create a dedicated Oracle cluster and another cluster to run different workloads and a separate cluster by organization or business function or demand or use or workload. But you have that ability and you can add and remove hosts to any one of those clusters at any time. You can do it through the interface or programmatically. So when you add a host, vSAN will then stripe your data across that and use it as another set of storage because each host comes with its own 36 terabytes of storage. So you get the storage, compute, and memory with every host you add, and vSAN leverages that as well as the whole vSphere now sees additional compute and memory capabilities. And that's when you saw the first slide with the box which says so much CPU, memory, and storage. When you add a host, those numbers all go up. Remove it, it goes down. So, good questions. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm happy to be available outside after this session for anything you would like to talk about. Thank you.